Hello and welcome to our bonus video on how beliefs work. So now that you are starting to work through your empowerment log, what you may notice is that in some of your entries, your thoughts are actually dismissing the things that you most need. And that's kind of an interesting paradox. And in order to understand that, we might need a little bit of background on beliefs and how they work. So we talked before about how the number one goal in this program and in personal growth and professional development altogether is to get your needs met and to have your needs met most of the day, because that helps you become more effective in everything you do, because you're not using additional energy trying to deal with emotional reactions and trying to manage your emotional reactions. It also lowers your stress, increases your energy, and gives you this kind of perpetual sense of well-being. And the well-being is a feeling of happiness, and pretty much what most of us want are to be happier and more effective. So that's what going through this program will get you. That's what getting all your needs met will get you. So we talked about how getting your needs met is really important, but there's a really good reason why sometimes the things that you need the most in life you can't get. And we talked about how there are certain beliefs that block you from getting your needs met. So now what we're going to do is talk a little bit more about how beliefs work so that you can understand why something like that might happen. Okay, so let's just give some examples of beliefs. So your whole world view is based on the beliefs that you've developed as you've grown up from when you were really young. And here are just some examples of beliefs about the world, about yourself. When I get scared, Dad will protect me. When older brother wants the toy I'm playing with, he'll just take it. We can't afford the things I want. Doctors help you when you're sick. Just one thing after another. These are the things that you grow up just believing. They're sort of the rules about the world, how the world works, what you can expect from other people, who you are as a person. But beyond everything else, these beliefs help you understand that in this world that you're living in, how do you survive? How do you get what you need to survive? And that's the main thing you're trying to figure out. So you could develop any beliefs, and here's kind of the process of how it works. So you experience a situation, you're going to try to understand it. And it can be any situation. It can be a pleasant situation. It can be a difficult situation. It can be a new situation. And so as you're experiencing a situation, you usually have some kind of feelings about it. They're usually good feelings or bad feelings. But you create a story to explain the situation. In your mind, you say, I wonder what this means. So typically what our mind is always doing is trying to make sense of things. So we develop, I say a story, but you could call it a story or an explanation. So we invent an explanation or possible explanation about something, and then we tend to test it. And this is a very probably non-conscious process. It's just, when I touch the burner, it's hot. But then maybe I might touch the burner one more time because it might not be hot that second time, right? So it's an idea that this happened once. If it happens once and it works out a certain way, then maybe I don't develop a belief about that. But if I observe something and then make up an explanation and the explanation seems to fit, and then I observe a similar situation and the explanation seems to fit again, and that repeats a few times, what happens is it becomes a belief. And we create beliefs about everything, how the world works, how to get our needs met, how to expect others to behave. But the thing that's really important to understand about beliefs is that once something becomes a belief, we no longer question it. And that is a problem because we have something in our brain called selective perception, and it protects us. And what it does is it protects us from trying to take in all of the input that we get in the world. that's too much for our brain to try to process at once. So what we do is we develop rules and shortcuts, and the idea is, what does our brain have to pay attention to? And typically, once we've developed a belief, our brain only takes in things that line up with our belief. We only perceive things in the world that line up with what we already believe or that pose a threat to us. So, for example, if I have a belief that people are selfish and all these things are going around me, what I'm typically going to notice is, the selfish car over here cutting everybody off, or the people fighting over this package. I'm going to notice things that line up with what I already believe, which is that people are selfish. But if I have a completely different set of beliefs, let's say people are kind, and I still have the same group of situations happening around me, I may not notice these two situations so much, and what I might do is pay attention to these two situations and say, oh, this guy's opening the door for these people, and oh, look at, they're helping, this person's helping the other person pick up the papers. Our selective perception works that it only takes in information that's relevant to us, but it also interprets the information in the world in line with what we already believe about the world, because we don't see any need to question our beliefs. So if you ever want to question a belief, you actually have to make a conscious effort to question it. The other thing about beliefs that's really important to understand is beliefs are self-fulfilling prophecies. And we talked about self-fulfilling prophecies a little bit earlier in the course. Self-fulfilling prophecies go like this, okay? So you have a belief, and you notice in the world things that line up with your belief, and you have emotions that line up with what you notice, and your behavior lines up with your emotions, and people respond to you, and that lines up with your behavior, and it supports your belief. Now, that might not be obvious, so let's go through an actual example. So if I believe that I'm not good enough, and I notice that my boss doesn't seem very impressed with my work, I might have a strong emotional reaction to that in line with I'm not good enough, because I will take this as a piece of evidence that supports that I'm not good enough. Now, if I had a different belief, which is I'm great, and my boss doesn't seem very impressed with my work, then the way I would interpret that is, oh, my boss is busy, or something else. But if I have a belief that says I'm not good enough and my boss does not seem impressed with my work, then I'm going to take that as evidence supporting that I'm not good enough. And I'm going to start having these emotional reactions. I'm going to be triggered by it. And so then my behavior is going to be a result of these emotions. I might check in more often to ask my boss what he or she thinks of my work, and that insecurity, that anxiety may come through, and the boss just might get irritated with all that and start avoiding me more, and then that tends to support this idea that I'm not good enough. I actually had a situation with a client where she had somebody that kept coming to her for validation and acknowledgement, and she said to me, it gets so frustrating because I know that this person wants me to tell them that they're doing a good job, but because they come into my office all the time and I feel pulled to tell them that they're doing a good job, I almost go the other way. It's like I react. I don't want to be anywhere near them, and I don't want to tell them that they're doing a good job because I feel manipulated. And that's the way these cycles work. Let's go through another example. Let's say that I'm anxious, like I don't feel like I can trust people to stay with me. And so now I'm in a marriage and I'm worried about my husband not staying with me. Maybe I don't feel like I'm good enough or whatever the reason is, but sometimes he doesn't tell me where he goes at night. Now, if I felt like I could completely trust my husband and sometimes he doesn't tell me where he goes at night, I probably wouldn't even notice. I wouldn't think about it. I would assume he's having fun. I would never have thoughts nagging in my head. But if I have a belief I can't trust people to stay with me, and I decide that I can't trust my husband to stay with me, then when he does something like go out at night and not tell me where he is, I'm going to start having fear and insecurity. I'm going to get triggered. And when I get triggered, that's going to lead to reactive behaviors, such as being suspicious, maybe reading my husband's texts or accusing him of cheating. But once I engage in this behavior, he then reacts to my reaction. The relationship deteriorates. My husband gets more distant. And the relationship eventually maybe breaks down. Maybe he actually does end up having an affair. But a lot of times beliefs end up becoming self-fulfilling prophecies. Now, this doesn't mean that if your husband had an affair, it's your fault. But what it means is that the more that we act out negative beliefs in the world, we actually create situations. People tend to respond to our reactions in a way that support our beliefs. So this is a pretty interesting phenomenon, and we talked about scarcity versus abundance when it came to our most important needs. So typically when you're a child and you're trying to get love from your parents, but your parents are distracted and busy and not thinking about you because they have other kids or other worries, and you're starting to feel that in some way you're not getting love or you're not getting attention or appreciation or devotion or whatever it is that you crave, then you stop trusting it. You start reacting more. You create a little block. And we talked about how this becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. You don't trust that when people show you love, it's going to stay, right? Because the way your parents did it was more intermittent. And so then you tend to distrust and block because the way you treat people makes them less able to give you love. An example is someone might give you a compliment and you dismiss them, because you say, oh, they're just saying that. And so then people don't enjoy giving you compliments anymore because it doesn't make them feel good. Every time they give you a compliment, then you're basically cutting them down. Or if somebody offers, accepts you, but then you say, oh, no, and you start judging yourself in front of them, then they start getting frustrated with you. And so then maybe they begin judging you. So it is interesting how this works. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. And that's the important thing to understand about beliefs. So one of the things that you're going to do in this program is you're going to fill out what I call a puzzle, or the multi-level belief model. And what this does is it identifies the unmet needs, which you're getting from your trigger log, and now you're working through on your empowerment log. As you work through your empowerment log, you're going to start noticing patterns in your thoughts, or how your thoughts work against you. Your thoughts are reflections of your beliefs. So from the patterns, from the log entries that we get on your thoughts, we're going to be able to begin to guess what your belief system is. And essentially what you'll do is you'll build a puzzle for yourself, and you'll begin to understand what are your scarcity beliefs and what are your survival beliefs. And what is your survival strategy, and what's the collateral damage that happens in your life as a result of your your survival strategy. So one of the things that I have found is that as people have gone through this program and built these puzzles for themselves, everything kind of falls into place mentally, and they begin to understand how this dynamic shows up in their life, how it's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy. And as they build this understanding, it gives them the knowledge they need to begin to break everything down. So this is an introduction on the concept. We'll be talking about it more in later videos, but I wanted to kind of give you an overview of why beliefs are so important, how they work, and how they can affect your ability to get your needs met or not get your needs met.